A Sandy Creek Christmas Without Him, an Otter Lake Holiday Tale from 1937 by Richard J.M. Gauthier. Dedication. This holiday tale, written in honor of Otter Lake's upcoming sesquicentennial celebrations in 2026, was inspired by a grandmother's recollections and tales of a challenging time for her family and all of the townsfolk during a difficult Christmas in 1937. This story is dedicated to a grandfather who was only known to his grandchildren through rare photos and treasured tales due to his tragic death in 1937. I dedicate this short story to my paternal grandfather, Mr. Rhéal Gauthier, who worked, lived, and died in Otter Lake, Quebec. There were no grand gifts that Christmas, no feast of kings, but in the flicker of firelight, in the laughter of children, and in the echo of a harmonica played by calloused hands, there was joy, there was love, there was him. Amen. What did fans have to say about Rick Gauthier's second collection of short stories? What did fans have to say about Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake Adolescent Adventures? Ken rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. Ken says, "Great short story reads. This is an entertaining and amusing read. For a relatively new author, Mr. Gauthier does a great job providing thorough and in-depth descriptions that creates a visual of his stories. He takes you back in time and makes you feel like you have lived or experienced similar life experiences. This book will make a great Christmas present for young and old alike." Floyd rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. Floyd says, "Little Ricky shares lessons in life for a young teen, very nice stories for young teens, lots of life lessons, a throwback to simpler times. This book is a welcome change of pace for a young man in these fast-moving, complicated times." Kathy rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. Kathy says, "Spellbinding, intriguing, relaxing, captivating, and detailed events from a bygone era." Kathy V rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. Kathy V says, "Great author. Great that the author gives all proceeds to charity. You can see he writes because he likes to, not because he has to." An Amazon customer rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. He or she says, "Little Ricky from Otter Lake. It's amazing short stories of a boy from a small town. It's an amazing book how life is for a small town boy. Worthwhile reading." Another Amazon customer rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. He or she says, "A must-read. Take an enjoyable journey. Add this book to your must-read list. Like Part 1, this volume comes to life. Not yet finished, but thoroughly impressed by the author's talent." Another Amazon customer rates Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake 5 stars. He or she says, "A fantastic read like the first book. Add this book to your must-read list." Like Part 1, the author makes this volume come to life with its vivid descriptions and photos. The progression of Little Ricky through adolescence and the impact and involvement of family, friends, and others on his journey makes this a terrific read. Sally buys her Rakuten Kobo audiobook and says, "Heartwarming, 5 stars." Sally says, "Heartwarming stories and cautionary tales of the life and love of a young lad." Sylvie Paradis reviews Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake in Little Ricky Short Stories Facebook group. She says, "He did it. Rick published a second set of short stories. The new collection is now selling on Amazon. I truly enjoyed reading the first short stories and will buy the new collection for Christmas. I love reading those well-written short stories, and I also like that Rick is supporting a cause close to my heart by giving all the proceeds from the sales to the food bank. Bravo, mon ami." Beth Lepac reviews Little Ricky the Lad from Otter Lake in Little Ricky Short Stories Facebook group. She says, "Interesting stories about familiar places and events. We enjoy reading about positive family stories." What did fans have to say about Rick Gauthier's first book, Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake? Ari rates Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake 5 stars. Ari says, "Heartwarming. The author skillfully brings you back in time to another era when life was simple yet filled immensely with the love that builds a family. The book consists of separate tales recounted by the hero of the book, Rick Gauthier, known as Little Ricky by his family. An instant classic that will not disappoint, written with heart and soul that shines through the pages." Della rates Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake 5 stars. She says, "The unassuming nature of a young boy growing up in a rural setting. I really enjoyed the book. It really captured this young boy's wonderment, inquisitiveness, and unspoiled nature. His appreciation and kindness are seen throughout the book in his interaction with his immediate family, relatives, and acquaintances. An Amazon customer rates Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake 5 stars. She or he says, very powerful story of a young boy's journey. A very enjoyable and easy read. The clever writing and pictures brought the book to life. The short stories are sure to put a smile on your face. A must read. Floyd rates Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake 5 stars. Floyd says, read this book and wander off to a much simpler time. Wonderful book for youngsters. A little something to read to the little ones at bedtime. Chucked full of life lessons told in an easy to understand way. Read this book and wander off to a much simpler time. Kathy rates Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake 5 stars. Kathy says, a very unique retrospect of a young lad's loving upbringing in a small Pontiac, Quebec town. Very entertaining, comical at times, yet very endearing, and attests to the closeness of this tight-knit community. Sally rates Little Ricky the Boy from Otter Lake 5 stars. Sally says, delightful, beautiful stories from a more innocent time. I love this book. It's a beautiful retelling of a childhood experienced and seen through the wonder and awe-filled eyes of a delightfully curious little guy called Ricky. It brought back so many memories of my own childhood and genuinely transported me to a more innocent and carefree time. The detail is extraordinary. The writer teases us with mentions of delicious sweets and candy that we all enjoyed as children and had me longing to revisit the sweet shops of my youth. A well-written book with obvious love and wonderment bursting out of every page. Buy it to read to your little ones. You'll enjoy it as much as they will. Sally buys her Rakuten Kobo audiobook and says, delightful 5 stars. Sally says, a delightful account and reminisce of days gone by. Told with love and great attention to detail, the author's love for those who inspire his stories shines through. A Sandy Creek Christmas Without Him. An Otter Lake Holiday Tale from 1937. In the rugged prominence of rural Quebec, the first Christmas without Rhéal Gauthier is fast approaching, and nothing feels the same. Left to raise 4 children on the edge of the wilderness during the bitter winter of 1937, Gertrude Gauthier must summon the courage to face not only her grief, but a world that has never been kind to widows. With no electricity, little income, and a property claim hanging by a thread, she stitches love into every gift, every meal, and every word she offers her children, determined to make their Christmas magical, even if her own heart is breaking. But Sandy Creek is no ordinary place. Here, neighbors arrive with cedar boughs and sleigh bells. The church glows with midnight hymns, and quiet acts of kindness begin to thaw what the cold has tried to steal, hope. As stars rise over snow-covered hills and the scent of spruce and tourtière fills the air, Gertrude and her family discover that love, faith, and memory can light even the darkest night. A story of quiet strength, small miracles, and the true spirit of Christmas. Acknowledgements. A sincere thank you to my editor and proofreader, Pierre-Paul Lacroix. This story could not have been completed without your help. Much gratitude to anyone contributing photos. Thanks to the innovation of 11 Labs, the majority of this presentation was produced using an AI-generated clone of the author's voice, called Ricky Little. A Sandy Creek Christmas Without Him, an Otter Lake Holiday Tale from 1937. Part 1. The Road Home Without Him. Sandy Creek, Quebec, October 1937. The leaves had begun their slow descent, rustling dryly along the forest floor like whispers of things lost. A bitter wind chased through the trees, bending the tall birches and sending the last coppered leaves flying into the cold gray sky. The gravel road from Otter Lake to Sandy Creek was nearly empty, just the occasional wagon or truck kicking up dust and pine needles as it rattled by. And now, down this winding road, a tired old team of horses pulled a weathered wagon bearing sorrow heavier than any harvest. Gertrude Gauthier, née Blaski, sat bundled in her wool coat, the brown one with the hem she had re-stitched last spring, though the thread had begun to fray again. She clutched her travel bag tightly in her lap, its brass clasp digging into her fingers, her knuckles white. Her boots were caked with dust from the long journey home. It had been 2 days of nearly unbearable grief, and one final soul-hollowing ride from Pembroke. The death of her husband, Rhéal, just 37 years old, had struck her like an axe blow to the chest. Gertrude, a humble woman first born as a Canadian into a poor Polish immigrant family, a woman who strived for love and happiness with her beloved French-Canadian husband and her children, now faced a different life, one changed forever. Beside her on the wagon floor, resting in the back amid straw and ice, lay a plain pine coffin. The air smelled of sawdust and the faint earthy tang of melting frost. Rhéal was in there, silent, still, and gone. It had all happened so quickly. Just days ago, he had gone out to crank their aging Model T, the one he'd kept running far beyond its prime. He had done it 100 times before, but that morning, fate had been cruel. The crank snapped back with a vicious kick, slamming into his abdomen. At first, it had seemed like a painful injury, one to complain about and nurse over supper, but by evening, he could barely stand. The bleeding wouldn't stop, and his skin turned ashen. Gertrude had begged for help, and neighbors rushed him to Pembroke General, the closest hospital equipped for such emergencies. The doctors did what they could, surgery, transfusions, but the blood loss had already weakened him, and the infection took hold fast. By midnight, the septic shock had stolen him away. Now Gertrude was returning home a widow, 45 years old, alone with 4 young children, and winter coming. As the wagon crested the final ridge and Sandy Creek came into view, a patchwork of cleared land, log cabins, and forest, Gertrude felt the heavy knot in her chest twist tighter. Smoke curled from chimneys. The scent of birch and spruce logs burning was usually comforting, but now it felt like a veil had fallen over her entire world. She recognized the roofline of their farmhouse in the distance, steep and shingled, with the lean-to summer kitchen addition Rhéal had built last summer. As the wagon pulled up, Frances descended the steps and walked toward her, the wind tossing strands of graying hair from beneath her kerchief. "Gertie," she said softly, reaching up to help her down. Gertrude stepped off the wagon slowly, her knees stiff from the ride and her spirit even stiffer. She gripped Frances's hand, and for a moment, neither spoke. Then Gertrude fell into her sister's arms, her breath catching in sobs that had been held back far too long. "I didn't make it in time," she whispered. "He was already too far gone." Frances tightened her embrace. "You did everything you could. We all know that." Together, they turned toward the house. Behind them, the driver, a local farmer named Roland Brisebois, began the solemn task of unhitching the horses. He'd been paid modestly to carry Rhéal's coffin home, though he'd refused more than a few dollars. "No need," he'd told Gertrude earlier. "He was a good man. That's payment enough." Inside the Gauthier home, the children had been waiting. Frances had kept them busy with chores and distractions, peeling apples, feeding the chickens, even starting their lessons early. But they knew something was wrong. Ma had been gone too long. The letters home had stopped. The silence had grown heavier. Eddie, the eldest at 15, had taken it the hardest, though he'd hidden it well. He watched the road every day, pretending to whittle kindling on the front stoop. Cyril, 12, was quieter than usual, spending hours in the loft sorting nuts and bolts from an old coffee tin. Gladys, only 7, had begun to ask questions no one wanted to answer. And Beatrice, the baby at 5, had simply started sleeping in Ma's bed at night. When Gertrude stepped into the house, the children ran to her. Beatrice wrapped her arms around her waist. "Ma," she cried, "I missed you so much." Gertrude dropped her bag to the floor and knelt down, holding them all as tightly as she could. Her tears fell freely now. "I missed you too, my little ones, all of you, so very much." Frances gave them a moment before gently touching Gertrude's shoulder. "Come sit. You need some tea. Warm up a bit." In the kitchen, the stove had been going since dawn. A kettle steamed gently. Frances poured the tea into chipped enamel mugs and set one in front of her sister. "You'll have to tell them," she said quietly, glancing toward the front room. "They need to know." "Come sit with me," she said softly, motioning to the children. They gathered around her, Eddie sitting straight-backed on the armrest, Cyril cross-legged on the floor, Gladys leaning into her side, and Beatrice nestled in her lap. "There's something I must tell you," Gertrude began, her voice trembling. "It's about Papa." The room stilled. Even the ticking clock on the far wall seemed to slow. "He was very hurt, more than we thought," she continued. "And the doctors in Pembroke, they tried very hard to help him, but they couldn't save him." Eddie looked down at his hands. Cyril bit his lower lip. Gladys's mouth opened in disbelief. "No," she whispered. "No, Ma, no." Beatrice began to cry, burying her face in her mother's dress. "He's gone to heaven," Gertrude said, her voice cracking. "He's with the good Lord now, and he loved you all so very much." For a long moment, no one moved. Eddie finally broke the silence. "So, what happens now?" Gertrude placed her hand on his. "We'll honor him, my sweet boy. We'll have him here in our home for the wake. Then we'll lay him to rest at the church in Otter Lake after his funeral service." "But what about us?" Cyril asked. "Who's going to chop the wood and milk the cow?" Gertrude took a deep breath. "We'll do it together. We'll get help from Uncle Paul, Uncle George, and the neighbors. We're going to be all right, but it's going to be hard. We have each other, and that's what matters now." Outside, Frances returned to the yard to help Roland move the coffin. It would rest in the parlor for 2 days while people came to pay their respects. Already word was spreading through the community. Father Martineau would come from the church, and neighbors would bring food and flowers. That night, once the children had been settled, Gertrude sat by the oil lamp staring at the wooden coffin that now dominated her parlor. She touched the edge gently. "You should be here," she whispered, "helping me put the children to bed, talking about the potato harvest, planning for Christmas." Behind her, Frances came in quietly. "Come," she said. "You need to rest. I'll sit with him a while."